Hey, Becky. It's good to see you again.
Hi, Lee. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and this is the first show of the new season. And you know what? This is the 8th year I've been doing this.
8 years?
8 years.
Wow.
It seems like yesterday. So we've had a good turn last year, and we're looking for a good one. We got some nice guests lined up, too.
We do. We really do.
Including the one we're going to have today, but we'll get to him in a minute. Hey, Becky, we had a kind of a special event happen here this summer, didn't we, with the movie?
Yeah, we did.
Tell me about it.
So in Beaver Creek, not too far from both of us here in Dayton, Ohio, we had a showing of the 4x3000. And it's the movie about a 4x relay for RAM. I think it was 2017 was the correct year.
I forget just when it was, yeah.
But we had a very big showing. Around 55 people showed up for the movie. And I'll be honest, like afterwards, everybody stayed, was chatting. My mom and dad were there. They were pretty excited. This was their first insight into this UltraCycling, which was pretty neat. So.
Yeah. Well, both of us were there, so we got to present the OhioRAAM Show in terms of our personalities, or that's not a good way to say it. But,
that was great, Lee.
You think so? You think so? Okay. Well, anyhow, we're back in the fall. We're got some shows on the shelf ready to show. And we're real excited for that. And we're real excited. I want to introduce a good friend of mine to you, Becky. This is Joe Barr over in Northern Ireland.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Becky. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm fine. I'm still recovering, but I'm fine.
I bet.
Well, I don't know how many times you've been on the show one way or another, but several, Joe. And Becky has got some questions for you, and hopefully we'll get around to talking a little bit about our concerns over financing UltraCycling events. So, Becky, I guess I could say earn your pay.
Or lack thereof, right?
Or lack thereof.
So, Joe, why don't you first start with telling me about your cycling history? I think you started as a professional road cyclist, and
I started many years ago. I'm in I think it's my 47th season. I started as a young boy. I'm riding bikes since I was 4 years old. I had a very let's call it a steep curve in the amateur ranks. I was national champion when I was 18, and I had a very successful amateur career that led on into an international amateur career, and eventually I made my way into the professional ranks. A little bit later than most, I have to say. Back then, it was much more difficult, to find the doorway into professional racing in Europe, especially. And then we live in an Ireland that's the extreme west of Europe, so we had a lot of countries to get across before we could get into where the middle of racing in Europe was. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy task, but I managed to do it. I was professional from 2000 until, from 1990 until 2000.
Yeah. So, and then how did you get into UltraCycling?
There's many versions of that story in the public, to be honest, but not a lot of them I've ever heard is that accurate, to be truthful. It wasn't a great start for me in UltraCycling, to be honest. It came from a fundraising effort that I was doing in 2009. My son Ross, my second son, was born with cancer, and he was in the cancer journey as a young baby at 5 months old. And about a year and a half into that journey, I got involved with a little respite centre here in Northern Ireland that was helping families that was in a situation like this to try and, recover, the realms of a family unit, etc., etc. And I think that there comes a point for every individual when you're forced into that situation, you realize that you have a little bit of a responsibility, and you certainly want to give something back for everything that people have did for you, and try to help you. Race Around Ireland arrived in Ireland in 2009. It was launched probably 3 months before I was about to try and do something from a cycling point of view to raise some funds for the children's charity. I knew nothing about UltraCycling, to be truthful. I knew nothing other than it was a crazy long race and people didn't get to sleep and all that stuff, which I didn't really understand. But I lobbied everyone that I could find that would talk to me to go on the race, and we ended up going to the 2009 Race Around Ireland, which is 2,500 kilometers. Like, so it's like half of RAM, and it circumnavigates the island of Ireland. Still running today. And I went there, and the story of my introduction to UltraCycling started there when I won the very first race around Ireland, and it progressed from there. So I've been in it ever since.
Wow, that's amazing, huh? Yeah. Well, I watched your 2014 RAM video where you were calling a lot of the children as part of charity. That was very touching. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, in 2004, well, to tell you about 2014, I need to go back to 2012. When I won Race Around Ireland in 2009, obviously I qualified for RAM. You know, as Lee touched on there earlier, the expense of for us in Europe to get to a race like RAM is not easy to do, and certainly whenever you're starting off and you have no real contacts, and we didn't have any contacts in the US. You know, I went to RAM in 12 and obviously DNF'd, and but while I was there, the rider who was off in front of me in 2012 was a gentleman who is a two-time finisher of RAM, Len Forquist. Len Forquist is the founder of a children's charity in the United States called HopeCam. And he founded it in 2003 because his son Matt, who was in the cancer program like my own son with leukemia, then his business background, he's involved in a business that builds the towers for communication, etc., etc. And he came up with this concept of HopeCam, where he connected the isolated children who were there in the hospital or at home with their school friends. And then he went through a rigorous program of setting that up with the schools and whatever. And I'm gonna stick my neck out and say he's now in all states in the United States, and he has raised millions for the charity. And when I went out of the race in 2012, I was in South Fork, just on the other side of Wolf Creek, in the Rio Grande Hospital when I got out. So we followed the race along the race route, and me being me, I stopped and took all the notes and whatever, because I thought there's going to come a time I'm going to get back to this. And I started to follow Len because his presentation at the start line was so impressive for what I call, not a mainstream type rider. Like, he was obviously a businessman who had, put himself in this position, and he was going to ride to raise funds for these kids. In his 2012 ride, he raised $335,000 in 12 days. He came back again in 2016 or 17, I think, and he raised over $1 million. So I got to know Len, and he just intrigued me as a guy. And I knew nothing about his background. I knew nothing about HopeCam. I knew nothing about his son. But after the race was over, I connected with him, and we just became really, really good friends. And when I went to 2014, which is what you're talking about, I rode for HopeCam. And the way we did it was every night I stopped, and we had a portfolio of 12 children, which was one each day that I didn't know in the United States. They were somewhere. And every day we raised the funds for one of those children somewhere in the United States. It was a great story. And I finished RAM, which was good as well. But Len and myself became best friends, and he hosted our team just before we left there in Vienna in Virginia. So
that was such a good story.
That's the story of how I come to get to know that charity. I've literally there was a little girl who was there in 2014. Her name was Eva Barr, and out of that portfolio of 12, for no particular reason, she had this, her image in the booklet had a little poster that was held up where she said she fought and she won, and I just felt that that was the message from myself, and it was the message from the team, and she became the face of the team that year, and we've stayed in touch, and when we were there just a few weeks back, she was back, lovely little grown girl, and she was in her own cancer journey, and she was in treatment at the time when I met her, and now she's a lovely young girl. So it's really, really good story.
Yeah, that really is. So, Joe, you have a lot of experience in UltraCycling, and some of the questions I had were, and you even talk about experiencing it in this 2019 RAAM, 30 miles out from the finish. How do you get out of your lows, your low lows? What are the strategies to get out of those lows you hit in all your events, right? Because you hit lows in a lot of different events. But
yeah, well, from the rider's point of view, or all I can talk about is my experience of it as a rider. Like, from my point of view, it's very difficult, and some of the experiences I had in 2019, they were new for me, believe it or not. And certainly around the sleep deprivation, there was a few new things that happened. But one of the things I would have to say is, if you talk about that 30 mile from the finish point, I have to say that 80% of that moment was down to the two crew members who were with me. With my partner Gillian, who obviously is with me every day, and the crew chief Alan, and they probably knew me best. Gillian certainly knowing me the best of both, but their interaction with what was going on there created a turning point. And I think it's a great example for any ultra rider as to how important the choices around your crew and your team are, and especially at moments like that there's people who can actually interact with you on a very, very personal level that shifts the mindset a little bit, because you're at that point where you are as good as you are to be where you are, but you're also at the point where it's just about to fall off the edge of the world. And I think that every rider at some point has experienced that. And they said the right things, and downhill to Annapolis wasn't that far away. So there was a few things, but for sure, Jill and Alan at that particular point were the two correct people in the right place at the right time. And it saved me at that point for sure, because I made a huge mistake of taking a little bit too much time, and I should know better. But when you get that fatigue, you almost want to steal another few moments, and it nearly caught me. To be truthful, but the team saved me, and that was all good.
I know you're in a new age category this year.
Yeah.
So how was the strategy different from previous years for this race?
Well, the strategy for me was last year in 2018, I went back to race around Ireland, which was the first time I'd been back there since 2009. And if you go back 2 years before that, I realized after 2014 RAAM that the sleep deprivation thing I hadn't mastered correctly. I still had a lot of work to do around it. So I started to, rather than look at like the 1,000+ races, I decided that I would go back and look more and ride more in the 500 mile category, where I could focus better on trying to overcome the problems of sleep deprivation, and also to try and increase my average speed, let's call it my land speed, especially in the nighttime, because when we looked at my overall performance, that was a big area where I was losing a lot of my average speed. So we spent a couple of years back, and we were very successful there. We won the 508, and we did a lot of really good races. And when I went to Ireland in 2018, I went back. When you're starting to move back into 1,000+, like Ireland's at 1,400, and I decided that I would try to apply everything that we had practiced for 2 years. And in Race on Ireland, I did 104 hours and 101 hours of riding, and it gave me a lot of confidence. Like after I won Ireland again last year, because I was up against a really good European rider who had been very successful in RAAM that year as well, Svata Bosak, and it was a great race in Ireland. And I thought that if I could take that strategy to RAAM in 2019 and try and position myself better towards Wolf Creek, that I could have a better race in the overall division. And everything went pretty good up until about day 4 or whatever. And I made 2 mistakes in Colorado. I made a mistake on La Beta, and I probably made a further mistake when I got down into South Fork and heading towards Almosa. I took a stop in Almosa and I probably shouldn't have. So there was I made a couple of mistakes in there that cost me in the overall, but I sort of felt that I had the speed, regardless, to try and be very competitive in the new category, and that proved to be the correct thought pattern. Like, because I knew that Valerio was going to be very strong. Obviously, his pedigree, like, is incredible, as we all know. Like, and Valerio doesn't give up easily, and he fought and fought and fought and fought till maybe a few days from the finish, and then the gap started to open. Like, but in general, I'm extremely happy with winning the category. I felt a little bit disappointed with the overall result. I felt like I could have been better. I would have liked to have thought that maybe I could have got in around 6 or 7 or somewhere around there in the overall. So, but that's it, and that's RAAM, and you live and you learn, I suppose, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, well, you were number 1 in your age category.
Yeah, no, that was pretty cool. Like, it was like when I obviously in the 50 to 59 category, I never got the opportunity to get in at the start. I got dropped in at the deep end, like, so. And I've always going to be up against Marco anyhow, and I was never going to beat Marco, so it was never going to happen. Like, so I'm glad I made it to the 60 category before he got there. So, but yeah, it was good. But I have to say, it was a great introduction to the new category to be up against Valerio, because that's a special kind of guy.
Yeah. So I was reading a little bit about your food that you eat on, including buttery bread and mashed potatoes.
Yeah, I'm old school, I'm Irish. Yeah, like I'm pretty simple eater, really. I don't do well with things that are off the shelf and stuff like that. Jill, who pretty much runs my life, is probably the best way to put it. Handles all the nutrition, and we live a very healthy but very simple lifestyle every day in life, and try to keep ourselves healthy. And Jill does a fabulous job around that, and she knows me so well on the races, and I'm sure every rider goes through the same thing. Like, the taste changes in all your food on such a regular basis within the race. It's nearly impossible to stay on top of what you would like, and you're expecting everyone in the car to have sort of the things that you're looking for, and it's very, very difficult. Like, but we in Ireland last year, Jill was, it's hard to believe, like, but she was making mash spuds on the move. And one of the things that really works for me is it helps me to go to sleep really quickly whenever we're trying to do really short stops, like maybe 1 hour or something like that. And we discovered that it just works for me, and so we stick to very simple, basic stuff. We use a lot of oatmeal, and we had a great oatmeal sponsor on board with us this year, in White's Oats here from Ireland. With that, and obviously all our BRL products that we use, all our carbohydrate drinks and all, we've been doing it since 2012 with BRL, so they've helped immensely to develop the products to suit what we're doing. So it's, I'm very, very privileged in that I've got a great person around me with great knowledge, and I've also got really good sponsors who are helping with great products as well. Like, so it's, it's a privileged position to be in.
So no big hankering for pizza, huh? No.
They're for afterwards. So that, I think the last time I had a hankering for pizza was we were in Alpine in Texas after Dex Tooks Nocum 1000, and we went in the pizza shop and we had this huge pizza like that. That's the last time, but it was after the race. I couldn't do pizza in the race.
Yeah.
I'm tiny anyway. If I had a whole pizza, that would be it. It would be over for the week.
Well, so Joe, tell me a little bit about finances and how to finance for RAM, and what has been kind of the things that you have done and you've learned through the years.
I think that there's two versions. To me, what I've come to understand is there's two versions of RAM. There's the US version of it and there's a European version of it, which are very different. And to come from Europe to do RAM with a full team and with all your equipment and all the stuff that you need to be in a solo RAM is incredibly expensive. And you've got all the flights for the crew, you've got all the food, you've got accommodation to organize, you've all the hire cars and all the fuel for everything. So all of a sudden the numbers go like this really quickly. And I think it's one of the big drawbacks. I mean, I've made it there 3 times now, but I think to ask a European rider, and I take my hat off to the ones who can do it year on year on year on year. I think that they're the exception as opposed to the rule. And I wish them all the success with that. But I think, for most guys, from Europe, if they get there once or twice, they've had a great go at it. I'm very fortunate I've got there 3 times. But what we've did is like we've operated the team that we put together from a commercial sponsorship background, and that has been very, very difficult because within that process we realized that we almost had to create our own media platform and our own sponsorship packages and our own value. So we had to create a team value that was value to commercial sponsors, because what was available from, let's call it the races or the organization point of view, covered the races, but it doesn't really impact that much the teams that are trying to get there and the riders that are trying to get there. Because at the end of the day, not to put it too bluntly, but the riders and the teams pay for everything. So you got a huge entry as well. It's a big cost for an entry to get into a solo RAM, on top of all the other things. So I think when you go there as a rookie, certainly in 2012, it was just a horrendous cost. But again, when you get a little bit of help and you get to know some people in the US and they're willing to help you, all of a sudden that hurdle starts to get less and less and less. So that to me is the key part of it, is trying to get as much help as possible in the US. And we have been very, very fortunate, and I'm very privileged that we've had a huge amount of help over the last, certainly since 2014. But to come as a rookie, it's an incredible impact of finances.
So what would you tell a rookie?
Well, the first thing is what I would say and what we have found is when you go to a commercial sponsor, you have to be very, very mindful about what exactly you are bringing to sell. Because if you're trying to just bring and sell a race that you're going to do somewhere around the world, is usually not going to cut it. You're going to have a lot of thought around what value that you can bring for that particular company, and how you're going to achieve that, because that also becomes a cost, because you have to deliver that, and to deliver that you usually need people and equipment to do it, and they become a cost again in the race. So it's a double whammy. It becomes very, very difficult. The other thing that I would say to them is, where possible, try and reach out for as much help as you can get in the United States for people who are wanting to help. And the one thing that I will say about all the people who are involved, especially UltraCycling in the US, they are very, very, very helpful and very respectful to the European guys coming. The support that we had along the road, even in the time stations and just from the general public along the road, was incredible. Now I know that we're one team that's running as high a level of social media platform that we possibly can, and that has shown and proven, we have evidence to say that is certainly helping the financial rewards from commercial sponsors. They like what we're doing.
So what kind of companies would you recommend to reach out that have been responsive for this type of?
I think it's important to try and find companies that, that have synergy, that actually align with what you're doing. And that again is not easy because that takes time. You got to create lists and you got to knock on doors and you got to try. And for every 50 doors you knock on, you may get one that will give you some airtime. And even after going through a process with that, you still may end up with nothing because you may not, just for whatever reason, be able to actually create the value that would entice them to get involved with you. And it's one of the things that we've worked very, very hard at is whenever we do have a sponsor that comes to help us, that we almost deliver double the value because it's in our interest to make sure that that happens. But not easy. It's not an easy task.
It seems like a full-time job just to do that piece.
It is. I have to say that, Jill and I run the team together. Jill does all of that work, all of the administration that goes around social media, creating websites, creating sponsorship packages, connecting with the companies, doing all of that stuff she does. And she does all the nutrition as well, by the way, and runs her home while I train. I'm also very privileged to have her on the team as well as in my life. She's the one thing I cherish every day. Without Jill and my team, it's not possible. And without Jill in my life, it's not possible. We've made a lot of mistakes and we've learned from the mistakes. And I seen that there was this opportunity where there was a pathway into UltraCycling for so many of these people. So we decided here to run what is referred to in the US as a double century, a 200. We do not have here in Ireland and either in Europe, very, very, very few 200s, which are I call entry points for people. So we put on a 200 and with my involvement with the World UltraCycling Association, we got awarded a 500-mile race after I won the World Championship in 2017, and we got it in the world calendar, and we promoted a 500. So we had these two races running, and last year we had the European Championship round for the 500. And this year, because we also discovered from that process that there were so many people who felt that the jump, who had come into the 200 from sportives or just interest, the jump to 500 was too great. So this year we've just launched them there on Sunday, 350-mile race for next year. So next year in May, we have 3 distances that we're promoting for UltraCycling, and in the 2 years that we're running them, the entries have tripled. So that has been a very exciting thing. So Jill also runs the races, by the way. That's the point I'm trying to make. So we've got that, and so when you say busy, yes, it is a full-time job running all the things that we're running. That's for sure.
Joe, do you have a website for these races where people can find information on them?
Yeah, we have our own website, which is teamjoebarr.com, and within that website on the menu bar, you'll find Race Joe Barr, and when you click in there, it opens you up to all the races, and you can do all the registration, and all the packages are all available there. So we just have the race. We opened the registration on the 1st of August, but we announced the date 2 days ago just to make people aware that it's coming. We've had a lot of inquiries about the races, and we're working on the new one at the minute, and we're just trying to get it finished for the website. So by the 1st of August, all the details, all the routes will be here. So it's Ireland. They're going to be good. It's as simple as that. It's the one thing that we've got running for us, that we have got great routes, and hopefully the weather, because we've moved from April to May, hopefully the weather will be good. It's a very interesting part of what we're doing, and I'm not going to be racing forever, but I want to stay involved in what we're doing, and I see the promotion of the sport, the way to do that. And at the beginning of the year, I was very fortunate to be asked to sit on the walk aboard along with all the other members, and it's been a great insight, and it's educated me on a lot of things I don't know about the back office in running a body like that, and try and move the sport forward if we can.
Hey, Joe.
Great.
Hey, it's good to see you again. Good to have you on here.
Thank you. Good to see you too. I'm sorry I missed you in Oxford at the timing station.
Hey, good to see you here again, Joe. We wish you well in your endeavors there, and we hope to see you here in the United States from time to time as the opportunity presents itself.
And I think that there'll be some of the races that we'll definitely be coming back to, like, for sure. We've looked at quite a few. I went to Sebring this year for the first time, and I had a really good experience. I had a really good experience there, and I just missed the 500 marker for the 24 hours, and I sort of think to myself, maybe next year I could go back and try and break 500. Maybe that would be good.
Thanks a lot for being here with us. We appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Always.
Becky, thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. I hope we connect again at some point.
Well, thank you, Joe, for being with us. It's always so great to see you, and you do so much for the sport of ultracycling, both as a participant and as an advocate for the sport. Thank you, Becky, for hosting the show. And we want to thank all of those of you who have supported the show over these years. We hope to present another interesting season. We'll be doing some different things, expanding the show into some new areas, trying some new techniques. And as you see already, we have a new format. We hope you like that. So our next show will be on September the 17th. We say here at the OhioRAAM Show, we like to find new talent. Well, this is about as new as you get. I think we're going to have our youngest guest ever on the OhioRAAM Show, and he has a huge following among ultracyclists already. He comes from Fort Scott, Kansas. Oh, you already know who it's going to be. He is the 15-year-old, maybe 16-year-old by now. I forget this when his birthday falls, but it's going to be the one and only Adam Ashwell. I think we'll see you again then in about 10 days. Goodbye.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.